This four-part series consists of interviews with researchers studying the Nazca bodies. These interviews have never been presented to an English-speaking audience before, providing details about their research and their professional backgrounds. These next interviews will be dubbed in English. Oh, and a bonus part 5 will be available soon. Dr. Zuniga, how did you get involved in the research of these Nazca bodies?
Well, it's a long story, of course. Several people at the University of Inca are involved, and we had initial contact with the Inquiry group. They invited us to participate in this, and then I contacted Joyce Mantilla as well. So we had contact with Inquiry and Joyce, and they had agreed to transfer the desiccated bodies to the University of Ica. But before that, they invited me to a meeting of foreign scientists who had successfully conducted research in the Congress of the Republic. They invited all the universities with facilities of archaeology and anthropology. The university where I worked has a facility of archaeology, so I don't know why I was lucky enough to be appointed at the university's representative at this event held in the Congress of the Republic, but this was, if I remembered correctly, in early 19, I think. So, well, I had to say, because that's when the deniers started saying this was a fraud, etc., especially the archaeologists. I had to say, an almost neutral opinion. I said, at first, we have to investigate. We have to find out how to prove whether these bodies are real or fake, falsified, right? So it seems that those who came from abroad like this, and then Dr. Clara Martinez looked for me here at the university, and she didn't find me, but she left a message that was interested in talking to me. Well, later, we contacted Joyce Mantilla and Inkari, and then we agreed, as I said, that the bodies would be handed over to the university. And I was alone at this point. I contacted Dr. Hernandez here, and I think he was the first person I came into contact with. I told him about the project. It was interesting, extremely interesting, and we really wanted to see the bodies. And then we contacted other doctors and other professionals, and well, we formed the investigation team and then organized to bring the bodies back from the city of Cusco. The bodies were in possession of Inca, who wanted to hand them over because they were having problems, I think, with possession. So we traveled to Cusco with Dr. Hernandez, with Dr. Cruz Condori, who was also part of the investigation team. And we brought these bodies back, 4 bodies. It was handed over to the university by Joyce Mantilla, with Joyce reserving the right to disclose the source, that is, who had given it, etc. And we brought the body. It was handed over to the university, and we began the investigation process. And then the pandemic hit and throttled the investigation process. And later, when the pandemic ended, we restarted the investigation only to have another interruption due to the lawsuit filed by the Ministry of Culture against the then Vice Rector, Dr. Martin Alarcon, and the undesignated. They then accused us of allegedly smuggling, distorting, and altering the mummies, but they had no basis for this. But we had already taken the CT scans and X-rays, and Dr. Mendoza helped us a lot with the X-rays, always collaborating with us with any new information. Then we organized with other members of the research team and had to cover the costs of the CT scans, which, well, was a bit detrimental to our meager budget. but we still had to pay our own way because the university, up until that point, still didn't want to have anything to do with it. Well, they sorted things out a bit, and we're still having some problems at the university right now. We're still not quite organized, and it's been a little rocky with this. It seems Dr. Martinez, who had been coordinating with them, that he must have the correct information, which is what the authorities want to do, but we fully intend to resume the investigation. And then along the way, we contacted several people, in this case, Dr. Ruiz. I once saw him being interviewed on a television program, and he was absolutely certain that these bodies were real. They hadn't been altered. So I like that. I like Dr. Ruiz's opinion. Then I spoke with Joyce. I said, Joyce, please give me Dr. Ruiz's phone number. And so it was. I contacted him. Dr. Ruiz gladly accepted me. And we still have him on our research team. And we even signed the worldwide declaration that the bodies were real, that they had not been manipulated in any way. That's more or less how the story went, roughly. I'm writing a book that will detail everything that's been done with the documents. So we're in the process of doing that. And I hope we'll later have the facilities to conduct these studies before we continue to have problems with the Ministry of Culture. It's a problem for us. This is a major obstacle as an institution that is involved in clarifying this issue, adopts a denialist attitude, issuing threats, and a host of other arguments that really make no sense. I've been an anatomist for over 35 years. I teach the human body from head to toe. I've dissected countless bodies, perhaps dozens, throughout my professional career as a professor of human anatomy.
Before we proceed, we pause to honor the memory of Dr. Edgar, who tragically lost his life in a car accident shortly after this recording. His vehicle veered off a cliff, leaving behind a profound loss. We are deeply grateful for Dr. Edgar's tireless dedication and the remarkable contributions he made to advancing this field, courageously giving his all. His legacy endures in our hearts and work. Dr. Edgar, what's your background and how did you get involved?
I'm an oral and maxillofacial radiologist for about 35 years, and that's an expert in radiology of the head and face. So I believe that with this background, I can guarantee that the studies I'm conducting are precisely of that nature. I have presented 3 scientific articles in indexed journals, and we note that in the case of Maria's body, which from now on we call Mario because we already know it's male, last year in the Mexican Congress, I gave a report that, based on the 9 anatomical ranges, I found it to be very close to being male. And now we have the information that a Canadian researcher has just discovered at the genetic level the first chromosome, which is a male trait. So there's no getting around it. Maria is Mario. So how did I get involved in this? Well, I think I'm convinced that there are no coincidences or casualties. These topics have always fascinated me. I also first saw them on television and wondered how interesting it will be to be part of the team. But coincidences might happen, and I was invited by Dr. Roger through his son, who has also been my student at the university. He's a doctor and dentist at the same time, and he's a great member to our team. And so that's how I led the team, and we faced all kinds of difficulties, as Dr. Roger already explained. Since we took over, the public prosecutor's offices don't even want to coordinate a coordinated investigation. Instead, from the very beginning, They wanted to take the mummies. And we had several presidencies, up to 3, I think, where they went to the university with the police and everything, trying to take them away. But at that moment, the vice rector for research, Dr. Martin Alarcón, had the courage and also the legal understanding of the university is autonomous and can't allow any law enforcement agency to take them without the rector's authorization. So, using our university autonomy, we prevented them from taking them away. So, that's the story. Dr. Roger is also one of the victims of this harassment or attack by the public prosecutor's office. He is one of those prosecuted for this matter. And if we were a grave robber who misused the bodies he found and things like this, and it would make sense. But I believe it's important to highlight the relevance of the role played by Dr. Roger, because he remains the leader of our investigation team, the one who has promoted all of this with great effort, not only in time but also financially. He is one of the most emphasized the issue of costs, because we know about CT scans, for example, are very expensive. We've done a series of CT scans and X-rays, and there's still the problem for us as a research team. We still have the financial support, not even from our own university. And while we already have support now with new authorities, we have the backing, suddenly the endorsement, the sponsorships, but we still don't have the financial part. And that's where we're calling on foreign institutes to join us in our research and also support us with the cost issue. For example, we want to replicate DNA analysis, which is the most expensive, and it's not common DNA, it's ancestral DNA, called paleo DNA. And of course, these laboratories don't exist in Peru, so we have to turn to foreign laboratories, and we need that support. That's how I arrived, and the state that we're in right now.
So far, the difficulties that we have with the Ministry of Culture is that they refuse to allow these bodies to be studied. That is, it particularly refuses to allow the University of Ica to collaborate with other national and international institutes to clarify this phenomenon that is so important to the world. So the trial isn't over yet. It's the process of being dismissed. A few weeks ago, the hearing was already in the appeals process but never took place. And I don't know why they're dragging their feet. It's perhaps one of the strategies that they have so that once the trial is over, the university can resume its studies. And we're trying to find public or private institutes, national or foreign, to help us in the process because the university doesn't have the budget. The university doesn't have the equipment, and Peru doesn't have the equipment needed to conduct in-depth studies. So the University of Culture, in any case, despite the fact that the EPSA was created in Congress, so on this occasion I didn't participate, I saw that the members or officials of the Ministry of Culture continue to claim that these are bodies that have been manipulated, have been distorted, and they say that the smaller ones are. But before they said it was a kind of handicraft, but resembled with bones from children and birds from the country. In the past, that's the answer that they gave. But now it seems they're changing their minds and say that they are the product of modern craftsmanship. So they've reached this point of not accepting these as real bodies, so they're practically putting up obstacles. That is, they don't want the investigation process to continue. So I don't know to what extent they will at least leave the university or suddenly start another trial against us based on some silly argument like they tried to do to prosecute 2 people from the university.
Dr. Edgar, what do you think about what Dr. Zuniga has said so far on this?
Well, we're facing the most important discovery in all of science of all time. That is, we were never alone. Humanity has always coexisted with other species, equally or perhaps more intelligent. As well, we've just shown in scientific articles, humans have a skull with greater capacity and therefore a larger brain. We've already stated that in the studies with a mammal, a bird, or a reptile has a larger brain size proportional to its body size. The animal, the species, it's usually more intelligent. So I believe that this research, if confirmed with further studies, we have a significant impact not only on science and biology, but also on social, ideological, and, of course, religious aspects. Everything will change. History will have to be rewritten. So we're faced with such important discoveries that they represent a shift in the scientific paradigm. And as history has showed in science, paradigm shifts have never been easy to accept. They've always been very difficult. As Dr. Ruiz has already mentioned, people were even murdered for trying to change a paradigm. I believe we should spread the word, but at a scientific level, and that is our task because much has already been said on this topic at the informal, educational, and social media levels. But where we aim to convince this is at the scientific level, and we will do so by publishing scientific articles or scientific fathers, and also contradict us at the same level if they believe it is appropriate to have something to discuss, because science advances at that level with purely scientific discussions.
These bodies belong more or less to the Nazca culture, at least until now, according to the carbon-14 dating that has been done. For example, Mario, formerly called Maria, dates back more or less to approximately 1,750 years. So Maria physically lived during that time. Now, carbon-14 dating has also been done on the children, and some date to about 1,200 years, others to about 800 years. And these beings lived at different stages of the development of the Andean and Peruvian culture. That's why, as Dr. Ruiz has pointed out, there's evidence of the presence of these beings in the Andean world, also in other countries from the period of cultural development in Peru, from the primitive community to the Inca era, at least as far as we know. These beings have been present. That's why they've been captured not only in the ground and stone, in what we call geoglyphs, petroglyphs, and in the craft they made, both in ceramic and textiles and other materials, in metals, etc. The representations of these three-toed beings, almost exactly in the shape of these beings, with a large, elongated head, no ears, with 3 toes on their feet and their hands, and with such similar characteristics. Even when these creatures were studied, viviparous ones, primarily those of Luiso, which we analyze in collaboration with the University of Engineering. So we've come close to determining that they were ovoviviparous beings, and this nature of the birth of these kinds of beings is even reflected in some chimu and wari tissues, at least from what we found. So we have, as we have described before, 3-toed beings squatting, trying to give birth to a creature, and another being in their stomach, and in the case of chimu and the wari weavings. So this shows us that yes, these beings have been in almost permanent contact with the Andean people, and in this case with Peru, with Andean cultures, and also almost everywhere else in the world. I believe there is no country exempt from the presence of these beings at different times. Now we have to ask ourselves, what were these beings doing? Where did they come from? Where did they go? What kind of tools did they use for their work? What kind of work did an intelligent being who has to work necessarily perform? It's the quality of intelligent beings, in this case, humans. Our fundamental activity is work, and this activity has been carried out since the separation of human ancestors to become Homo man. And it's thanks to work that this great process, as people have said about this work, took place. That work created man himself. But what did they do? What did they eat? What did they produce? Where did they live? Do they have any society? No, we don't have any evidence of any trace of having formed a society of these conglomerate of these beings. There isn't, at least not in the near future. It won't be discovered over time because it's an unprecedented situation, one where a lot of questions will be asked and discussed with the research team to which it belongs. We've come to the conclusion that this research won't end in a decade. It'll probably take 4 or 5 decades, depending on how science develops, to try and understand and comprehend these beings. We're in the first phase and we're doing almost nothing. We're just making small scratches to delve deeper into the situation later. So that's what I can say. They have indeed been present in the Indian world, and they've been present at all stages of a development of the Peruvian society. From the primitive community where the cave paintings are found, and then up to the time of humanity.
What did you and the team do when the Ministry of Culture said that the bodies were just fabricated dolls?
Well, look, we did. When they said that these small beings measuring 60 centimeters or less, they said it was an armed body currently using this bone of children and birds and the head of a llama, this kind of situation. So we said, well, if this really is so, then we're going to do a test, right? Well, on the head, on the right sac of one of the beings, and on the femur, specifically Albert, we did the test on him. So we took them to the laboratories at the University of Engineering, which is a prestigious university in Peru, and we came to the conclusion that these samples taken from different parts of the body belonged to the same being, to the same individual. It was not armed with a llama head and with children's bones. Also, they said that these beings had been covered or assembled with cardboard, with glue, all these things. And what we did when we took the samples is that we made the cuts with these devices that dentists have. My son has helped me a lot with this. And so when we started to cut the body to take small samples, we realized that they had this kind of tissue of living beings. So the question is, how did they what kind of skin to make these look authentic? What kind of skin did these craftsmen use? Then it's absurd to think that someone could cover with some material from some animal and not find fissures or tissue joints, as usually appears when the procedure is done. There is no situation of skin joints and the whole body is natural. There is absolutely no part, according to what we have seen in the tests, when we had access to these beings, there was no part that these beings were fabricated. We even took samples of the egg because they said that these eggs were fabricated from rivers selected with an ovian shape to make people believe that these bodies had been fabricated with these things to make it appear that they were extraterrestrial beings. They even began to say, and we have never confirmed, nor do we confirm that these are extraterrestrial beings, because a group of bodies from different eras were found in a cave. And the question is, how did it come to be deposited in the same cave, in the same site? So Many bodies from different eras, not only humanoid, but also those called reptilians and those other bodies similar to insects, but which are also reproduced by the means of eggs in a way like the others or viviparous as well. So we took a sample to see if they were inorganic material, and when we took them to the laboratories at the University of Engineering, they also told us that this is organic material. That is, they were indeed petrified eggs, which of course have a density when the tomography, the X-ray is taken, but probably due to the problem of aluminization or materialization over time, some eggs have suffered modifications in their appearance similar to metal. Furthermore, we did not really know about the composition of these beings. We don't even know what kind because we're comparing what we want to compare, or rather, with the bodies of the animals that we know on Earth and also with humans themselves. But it is assumed that if these beings are beings completely different from other living beings that exist on planet Earth, then they must have genetic composition, different organics, and its behavior over the years in the process of what we would call not mummification, but rather blinding has kind of taken a type of reaction over these beings.
When I spoke with Dr. Ruiz in a previous interview, he told me about how people throughout history who got into big trouble for ideas that turned out to be correct. Bruno was burned alive for just saying that there might be other worlds beyond Earth. Galileo was placed under house arrest for saying Earth goes around the sun instead of the other way around. And these people weren't wrong, they were just ahead of their time. Do you think that we're in that same predicament today?
Look, what Dr. Ruiz said about the problem that in a certain era of humanity, people resisted changing their way of thinking and seeing the world was interesting. But this situation was not just for nothing, but because there were interests of a class or classes that did not want the truth to be known. That is why they immediately went to people who said the opposite of what they said. This was generally in the Middle Ages, and that is why they created the Holy Inquisition. As Dr. Ruiz says, this situation from the past exists in the 21st century. We're facing an inquisition, but why an inquisition? Because there is still, despite the accelerated scientific development, they still want to blind us. They want to close our eyes, our hearing, and our senses so that we do not find out the truth. And behind this, let's say, they are fundamentally all the religions of the world, because religion is an instrument of the kind of power that takes us to the minds of the people that have already been asleep. No, excuse me, those of you who are religious, because religion has significantly fulfilled the role and continues to fulfill it today. If this were to become clear, and it will become clear, no matter how many obstacles, no matter how many stones, no matter how many walls, this will always be surpassed, because that's how history is. That's how the process is. That's how human thought and knowledge change. Because if not, humankind would remain in the past. But science has been breaking mental patterns and paradigms, and today, this very important discovery we have in Peru will break all patterns, and it will surely go against the interests of the classes that don't want this to be known, because that would happen if the world understood that we're not alone. there are beings other than humans, then this would break every pattern they don't want to break. They want to keep people submissive, ignorant, believing that everything they've told us is true. And that's the problem, because this is going to completely change the world. Though the way we concede everything around us and everything that happens in the firmament, in this tremendous dark vault we surely have, with the existence of not only other stars or planets like ours, but also the Milky Way, which numbers in the thousands of millions of stars and planets. And there's even talk of not just one universe, but several universes. So our conception will change. The conception of man is going to change. And when we realize this reality and this knowledge will advance, it will be a little difficult to manage humanity. So I think that's the fear. And there are probably straw hand trusts in Peru. I don't think those at the Ministry of Culture on their own initiative are trying to demonstrate their ignorance. I don't think there are people so ignorant in the face of the material evidence being shown to them through CT scans, etc. They don't want to accept this. Denialism must be driven by some other force in Peru and certainly in the world. But this must be clarified. And despite the fact that a lot of people are keen to keep this from being disclosed to the world, the unstoppable dissemination of all the studies we're going to do is bound to happen. I'd say, fortunately, people are joining in. It was just 2 or 3 of us that started out, but now there are world-renowned scientists that are joining in, and that strengthens us. And I think we're absolutely lucky. And whatever is right, whoever speaks the truth has nothing to fear. Simply move forward in their research process. And they've already said we need more scientists to join in to further reinforce what we're proposing, what we're affirming. And this must necessarily lead to an explosion of knowledge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zuniga and Dr. Edgar, for being on the show and taking the time to talk about your research. If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button right down below and subscribe to not miss part 5. You can find all the written articles to these interviews on my website at ufonews.co. That link will be in the description box below. And if you enjoy space ambient music, check out my music channel at Other Worlds Ambient Music on YouTube. It helps aid sleep and relaxation. That link will also be found below. That's it for today. I will see you next time. Be safe and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.